Dr. V. Kumaraswamy, PhD, MBA from IIM Ahmedabad and FCMA, is a seasoned corporate leader, board professional, author, columnist, and policy commentator with nearly 4 decades of experience across manufacturing, financial services, international business, strategy, risk management, and corporate governance. Dr. Kumaraswamy has served on the boards of several companies and played key roles in restructuring, turnaround management, capital mobilization, cross-border ventures, and international financing with leading global institutions. A respected thought leader on economic policy, finance, industrial development, governance, and business strategy, Dr. Kumaraswamy has authored over 100 articles and books including Making Growth Happen in India and Weird Adventures, Uncommon Lessons. Dr. A. Kalayasan is Associate Professor of Development Studies at the Madras Institute of Development Studies and Visiting Research Fellow at King's College London. Dr. Kalayasan has held academic and research positions with Niti Aayog, ISID Delhi, Brown University, Harvard University, and IIT Bombay. Dr. Kalayasan's work focuses on the political economy of development, fiscal federalism, and structural inequalities in the global south, and includes the co-authored Cambridge University Press publication The Dravidian Model, Interpreting the Political Economy of Tamil Nadu.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have very high-profile panel going to be a very lovely discussion. Now I request Dr. Kalayasan to lead the conversation with the author and Mr. Kumaraswamy. Over to you, Dr. Kalayasan.
Professor Santosh Miratra, Mr. Praveen Chakravarti, and Mr. Kumaraswamy, Mr. Giridhar, and ladies and gentlemen, and really it gives me an immense pleasure to be here, and also very excited for 2 reasons. One, it's also going to be a tough job for me, because the author of the book happened to be my professor and a mentor. So it is very difficult for me to critically reflect on the book, but still, because the skills that I learned from him, I'm going to reflect on a bit on that. And the co-author, Professor Jajati, also happened to be my close friend. So it's really, at one level, it's a very honor. And another level, it's also a tough job to moderate. And I was thinking, how do I introduce this book to students? If for a master's student, that is a very important book. In few lines, how one should introduce this book. I think I would introduce this book in the following way. Besides the critical comments made by Mr. Praveen Chakravarti and the presentation made by Professor Santosh Miratra, I would say simply in 2 lines as to why India has not been able to generate jobs and wages for majority of population. In the sense, it's not that it's that the other countries could not do it. Other countries have done. For instance, the East Asian countries, which are almost similar position that India was in the 80s, for instance, India and China were same position. Per capita income of India's position almost similar in 1980s, before China opened up. And today, China's per capita income is 7 times of India. And its manufacturing is almost 30% of its GDP. But India is nowhere close to that. Not only China, even Vietnam, small countries in East Asia. What went fundamentally wrong in our policy, history of our policy making? I think I would introduce in book in that context. So what is that I have learned by reading this book? I would also say in the interest of the students, few lines. One, typically in economic discipline, those who do this macro mathematical models often those models even do not reflect the reality. And there are other folks who do really thorough empirical job, very granular empirical job, but they don't often do theory or connect with the theory in that sense. So I think probably the rare piece of scholarship that you would find in this book, which bring this together, I think which is very rare and with the cutting edge models plus the empirical data sets. I think that's how I would introduce this book to the students. With this, I have one question to reflect, to Professor Santosh Mehta. Of course, Mr. Praveen Chakravarti raised many questions. One question that would be worth, thinking about, not only for this platform, but otherwise in general, which is, this is a concern among economists, as you know, Professor, of say, starting with Danny Radrick from Harvard Kennedy School. He clearly says that the global south reached a level, it is very difficult for countries to move, industrialize the way we thought in the 20th century. In the sense, today, most of the economies are actually witnessing some kind of deindustrialization, and India is no exception to that trend of deindustrialization, which is now proven by many academic work, including Professor Nagaraj from IDEA. What do you think? And it's going to actually getting accelerated by introduction of the premature deindustrialization. You seem to be very optimistic, so I was wondering to reflect on this question. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much, Kalai. So, I will respond to the point that you've made, but I've also first to clarify so that people don't walk away from this room misunderstanding the argument that Praveen was making. You see, Praveen made the following argument, that every additional growth rate or GDP growth rate creates less and less jobs in the non-farm sector over time. That's what the data is suggesting. And his broad point is correct. What he didn't dwell on is why this is the case. It has rather little to do with AI, by the way. Because unfortunately, the term AI is beginning to is attempting to capture everything that's happening in the space of Industrial Revolution 4 technologies. Industrial Revolution 4 technologies consist of the following range of technologies. And AI is only one element of it, I have to explain to you. What are the IR4 technologies? One is 3D printing. A second is blockchain. A third is robotics and automation. And then you have AI. Now, given this range of technologies that we are talking about, somehow AI, the term AI is used as a word to encapsulate all these 4 types of technologies. Please try and appreciate that AI is going to impact, as far as India is concerned, India's exports of IT software. And that's it. Mainly the impact will be there. The impact is not going to be, felt across the economy as much as is believed to be. I know there are people who are nodding their head in disagreement. We can engage in a dialogue about this. The fact of the matter is, there is somehow a belief that there is so much use of technology and labor power that's happening in our economy, which involves the possibility of replacement, that AI is going to cause massive shocks. The fact of the matter, please appreciate, the world has seen 4 industrial revolutions. This is the 4th one, okay? Every industrial revolution destroyed some jobs, but it created many more jobs. And that's exactly what's going to continue to happen with the IR4 technologies across the board. Not talking about AI alone, across the board. The risks exist mainly in most industrialized countries. We are nowhere close to that. Please try and appreciate there is plenty of potential for generating jobs. And as I was saying to you earlier, that we were generating 7.5 million new non-farm jobs when we were growing at 8% per annum from 2003 to 2015. What was that strategy? Can we try and understand what that strategy is? And I think I need to explain that to you so that you don't misunderstand what Praveen was trying to say. Because please understand, Praveen was in that government just as I was. I was in the Planning Commission. That growth rate was being generated not just by the corporate sector in the non-farm corporate sector and the services corporate sector, but it was being generated by MSMEs. Many people in this room are among those who were actually creating hundreds of thousands of jobs in every state of this country because the MSMEs were thriving. The argument that I'm making in the book is that we demonstrate empirically, on the basis of data, which he recognized, that in the last 10 years or so, policy-induced shocks to the MSME sector have been such. In this state, I don't have to tell you what happened in the last 10 years to Tirupur. Tirupur is only just one example, ladies and gentlemen. Tirupur is the tip of the iceberg of the clusters that exist across this country. There are 5,500 clusters in this country. They were all generating jobs. Please try and appreciate this. We demonstrate this in the book, in chapter 7. So what I'm saying, in other words, is the following. That if you generate growth, which brings jobs being created by the MSME sector. Don't expect the corporates to generate many jobs, because our corporate sector is, in the manufacturing in particular, is heavily capital intensive. So we don't expect it to create too many jobs. That's one reason why he was making the argument. Second is that we have to appreciate that the only jobs that the IT sector creates in the software and global capability centers are for highly skilled people, very highly skilled people. But as I was demonstrating to you earlier, because of the massification of higher education, you've got to generate millions of jobs for millions of less educated people. And that's what the MSMEs do. And on your point, you see, essentially, I've even answered your question, because I am saying that it's feasible to generate jobs if we had the right strategy. We don't have the right strategy. This government doesn't have the right strategy. And I wasn't able to elaborate what strategy we wish to follow. That's elaborated in the book. I would encourage you to have a look at what the argument in the book is. So in the interest of time, I'm going to,
Thank you, Professor. With that optimism, let me now invite Mr. Kumarasamy to reply. Yes.
So good evening, Professor, and I would urge all the audience to go through the book. It's a fantastic book, summarizes beautifully all the arguments in the matter of labor, both demand and supply side, as well as related areas. But that's only one of the 4 factors of production. Professor, I have to disagree from now on 2 or 3 things, my analysis of things. One of which I think you touched upon regarding the government jobs. Let me give you some statistics. USA, the average civil servant's salary to the average per capita income is 1.1. Euro and UK is about 1.3. Vietnam is 0.9. China is 1.4. In India, it's 4.5:1, which means the average civil servant salary is about 4.5 times, whereas in the other countries, the average is about 1.1, world average. What does it mean? We are paying 4 times the market rate to the government servants. I'll just give an example. Just last week only I was in a school where the person who was teaching 1st to 3rd standard was getting a salary of 1.1 lakh. That is a dual management school where a lot of 7 government teachers and 10 private sector teachers. The best of private sector teacher other than headmisters was 30,000. So what does it mean? A person who's teaching 1st to 3rd standard is getting 1.1 lakh. But the person who's teaching this one is getting 30,000. My argument is that the government is absorbing too much of resources to create too few jobs. Let me translate it to what it can do. If only India paid only the highest of all these countries 1.5, then the government would be occupying at least about 4 to 4.5 crores people additionally, state and center together, Today we have judges, 22 judges per million, whereas US has 150. Euro has 220. Some other country has 300. The recommended is 330 for our density population. Our police force is on par with Uganda, 95 per million, whereas the recommended is about 300, 330 as UN, this one. So this is one factor which needs to be tackled. We have problems at both ends. We do not compensate the higher echelon of people properly. They are very poorly they are heavily underpaid because we have divorced at both ends the compensation from the market. That's point number one. Number two is Manrega. And of course, you are also part. Can I take 3 minutes? And he was also a part of the committee which designed the Manrega. The market was functioning with some kind of equilibrium, but you come with a huge intervention, 1/3 the market size, with levels which are at least about 60 to 70% more than the prevailing informal market rates there. Of course, formal industry used to pay the rate which is determined by Minimum Wages Act. But the essential difference is, other than in Tamil Nadu, in none of the other states, people work for 8 hours. They work for 4 hours. Here is a guy who's getting 336, which is the average for 4 hours work, which is 90 rupees. Vis-a-vis 8 hours work, he gets about 240, which is 30 rupees in informal sector. Of course, formal sector pays for 8 hours, not 4 hours. So what did it do? This workers started demanding better wages, and they went to the landlord to demand extra wages. What did he say? Oh God, you got a new concubine? Please go there. I will mechanize. He mechanized like crazy. Evidence? Escorts which was quoting at 110 to 112 rupees in that 11, 12 years is quoting today at 4,000 rupees adjusted basis. Courtesy MNREGA, courtesy the willingness to mechanize by the farmers at a rapid pace. So, how did it affect the small scale industries? The non-farm, informal sector, which in India delivers 85% of the jobs and 44% of value addition. Sir, I cannot afford what you want, so please search your own jobs. And what did the employee himself do? He can't work one day at 100 rupees per hour rate, another day at 30 rupees per hour rate. Very difficult for anybody to motivate himself. And this, in my opinion, is one of the reasons why labor market in India has got corrupted by this MNREGA. So systematically from 2004 onwards, the government has interfered in the free functioning of the market. First with labor and MNREGA, land acquisition, NGT, and then inflation control, and then of course GST, because GST has another problem. I don't know why we are making so much of it. 60% of the world's employment is generated in the informal sector. Even in US, it's 56%. GST, which was, they thrive by tax arbitrage. And you put GST and brought them to the formal fold, their profitability has vanished, their wages have skyrocketed, they are not able to create jobs. This, in my opinion, are the 2 or 3 factors. And of course, land is a very, very sad story. If at all you wanted a Hitlerian kind of act, it was the Apprentice Act before. Terrible it is. And land acquisition will, more or less match it, in my opinion. With the result, I'll tell you, I have reviewed another book after reviewing his book. The lowest rate of land acquisition in India in any state is higher than the highest rate in Netherlands. You can imagine. It takes 7 days, rather, this is an actual instance, it took 7 days for a guy who wanted to set up a coating paper plant to manufacture 4 times India's annual consumption. 7 days, a marshy land of 5,000 fishermen. This is my personal experience. In Vietnam, one of the land allotted was not suitable to me. I wanted one more. At 8 o'clock dinner, he said, sir, wait for one more day, I'll give you one. Next day morning, 8 o'clock, he finds me one other suitable land. In India, a prominent group, perhaps the biggest in the manufacturing sector in India, He pays everything, all this analysis and the environmental analysis, pay the compensation, gets it registered through the registrars, but it takes 17 years for him to get possession of the land. You think any entrepreneur will be enthused to stay back in India and invest? These are the factors, in my opinion. Of course, this land matter is beyond the purview of the books. MNREGA he could have covered, and I rest my case. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Kumarasamy. Want to respond to 2 minutes?
Let me just very briefly respond to Dr. Kumarasamy. With all due respect, he's a good friend of mine, and I
must confess, they have been arguing for last 2 days. Actually, there's a lot to say.
But it's it's very important that you understand where he's coming from and what the nuance of my argument is. First, let me deal with the Manrega argument, because I'll loop back to the argument about how much higher the Sarkari workers' wages are. So on Manrega, essentially the argument that Dr. Kumar is making is that artificially the intervention of Manrega has raised rural wages, and that's the main reason why the landlord can't find workers. What the bigger picture that he's missing is the following, which was essentially the argument I was making, which was the foundation of what I was saying earlier on from there. It is the following. From 2004, when Manrega came into existence, and I ran the Manrega program, let me assure you, I was head of the Rural Development Division. From that point, after the intervention, yes, it raised open market rural wages. It was essential to raise rural wages, because they were at 40 rupees and 50 rupees. They were way below living wage in rural areas. Woman got 40 rupees, the man got 50 rupees. I'm talking about 20 years ago. But because non-farm jobs were growing, despite the existence of Manrega work, millions of workers were leaving agriculture across this whole country. Why? They were not being held back by Manrega. So what answer does Dr. Kumar have to that? The point is, for 15 years in our country, millions of workers were leaving agriculture for non-farm work, because non-farm work was growing. That's the point. That non-farm work, I've demonstrated to you, has stopped growing. Because it stopped growing, millions of young, educated youngsters are actually going back to agriculture. That's what I was arguing. So the argument, in other words, you have to appreciate is that Manrega is giving a minimum wage to people who, for a very limited period of time. Very limited period of time. They don't have full-time work. They can go and work elsewhere. And I have to sort of answer this Sarkari, because we middle-class people have this obsession that, Sarkari babus are paid too much. Acha. If your average wage for those in the private sector are stagnating for 12 years, and if the Sarkari person is paid 1.5 or 3 or 4 times, why are you surprised? Because there is a historical basis for that Sarkari wage. And because non-farm jobs in the private sector are not growing, so why would you expect? So what you're not appreciating is that if the non-farm sectors, if the wages for most people in the private sector were growing, then this differential wouldn't be what you are expecting. What you're finding. So this is an artificial situation created by the fact that non-farm jobs are not growing. Yes, I agree with you that the highly qualified are not being paid enough. I agree with you there. That's a problem to be solved by the 8th Pay Commission. But that doesn't mean that you're going to reduce the wages of those. You have to also address the following question, last sentence. that 89% of all Sarkari workers are in group C and D. Now, please appreciate that the police constable is group C. And that's a good thing. You have to have police constables. If you don't have enough police constables, who's going to do the traffic police? You don't have enough traffic police. I know you have issues about corruption and all that. We can handle that, but you don't have enough policemen in your own state. That's what I'm trying to say.
Thank you, Professor. Now may I invite Mr. Sridhar Gopal to reflect his.
Yeah, I also don't want to go out of this room without any answer. I've got something. I'm responsible for a company which manufactures two products. One is cutting tool, which is a manufacturing company what we run, and also to help the other manufacturing companies to flourish. The other company, other division of mine makes auto components for farm sector. So perfectly qualified to question this to Professor. One is, compared to 10 years ago, we have 1/4 of the employees producing higher turnover, better profitability, highest quality. And that's not with AI, without AI.
I know.
Yeah, that's it. And then with regard to the other component, you said, okay, farm sector, what can we do? We're making components for farm sector. Everybody is doing, it's a seasonal business. Suddenly monsoon goes off. 4 months there's no business for farm sector. So what can I invest on it? We don't know what's going to happen. If it's industry oriented, we can have a dialogue. What can I have a dialogue with them? It's not possible. So how do we handle this situation? With the AI coming in, you made a point that's more to do with other sectors. In manufacturing, a lot of places, AI is going to replace jobs. There's no answer. It's inevitable for us. Okay, we are very sad with people. Very sad that it's going to happen. Without doing that, for one question, only one sentence I'll do it. We are forced to compete with China. China has got all the raw materials in their place. All that I have to compete with is operational cost. Then where do I reduce them? And if it's global manufacturing or Indian manufacturing, today, originally we thought we'll prevent China to sell in India. But today that's all gone. Chinese product come in, we have to compete with it to exist. Therefore, there is no way, and the answer, Professor, I'm not as expert as you. The question is, how do we go about it? I have a constant pressure from every circle to say, increase a job. How do I increase a job? To make whether to answer the investors, as to the customers. That's the point.